Welcome to My New Day. It's Friday today, which means it's Fight for Your Family Fridays. We love hearing from you, and a lot of you have been watching this series all the way through. The 8 weeks of talking about being best friends and best lovers.
Did we ever hear from you last week?
Yes, we did.
We'll give you something to talk about. But you see, what happens is that when someone is transparent, when someone becomes vulnerable, all of a sudden it requires you to begin to look at your own life. But then it also gives you permission to begin to talk about things that you never have before. And that's where you begin to then experience true freedom.
It's true. And that's all about what we're talking about today. We want you to be satisfied in love. And what that means is living in spacious places with screaming freedom. So we are going to be right back after this to talk more about you and your marriage.
Eight Ways to Be Satisfied in Love is the subtopic to Best Friends, Best Lovers. If you haven't gotten your copy, I really encourage you to do so. But being satisfied in love, or to find satisfaction in love, control and manipulation is not the way to get it. And so what we want to do is talk about freedom today. And freedom isn't, just going through life without restraints. God puts in boundaries, and within those boundaries you find extreme freedom and safety.
And in the intro I mentioned spacious places. That's because in the book of Psalms in the Bible, it talks about, God, I'm so grateful you take me to spacious places. And everything in me just leaps with joy inside of me, because when I imagine that means I can just have so much freedom to run and roam. Why? Because my boundaries are strongly and firmly in places where I can be free within those. And so, yes, we love freedom. In fact, I've always sort of prided myself on being an easygoing and, just a fun-loving person. So I'd like to tell you a story where I found out something just a little bit different about myself. Should I tell that story?
Yeah, we can, because we're on our way to freedom.
Yes.
But the journey is really a journey of wholeness, because we're talking about a renewed heart, a new heart with new desires. And so that's the journey that we're on. And there has to be a willingness on each of our parts to become vulnerable, because we like to stay hidden, and we are secrets best hidden in places of darkness. And what we want to do is bring them into the light. And the whole thing is that when you become vulnerable with one another, when you begin to share things of your own heart, it's never to offload a heaviness or a burden that you're carrying and impose that upon the other person. It's not like, oh man, I got all this garbage in my life, here, and then they've got to deal with it. But the whole thing is that the only reason that I would share with you the deep places of my heart is for this purpose and this personal purpose alone, and that's because I desire you. You see, I want you. I don't need to just, offload the guilt of my life, but I'm recognizing that there have been barriers. You see, and what we don't want to do is just survive. We don't want to only be stable. I'm in my journey to personal wholeness.
That's it.
You see, where our marriage then becomes significant, and we begin to thrive in life again. Where we begin to truly experience effortless victory. Where these things that so easily entangled us now begin to fall away.
Yes. And so back, as many of you know, there was a crisis in our marriage that happened 11 years ago where I had a sexual affair and I was pregnant as a result of that. You can imagine the flooded pain, desperation, excruciating torment that both of us went through.
Yeah, and let me say this, to all of our listeners and studio audience. By the way, studio audience, thank you.
You're beautiful.
I'd like to applaud for you. I love having you here. And for you at home, for taking this investment, into your marriage. But you see, when there is pain, when there is a crisis, when all of a sudden all of this information that was once hidden and in darkness is revealed, guess what? You each experience pain in your own way. And you don't understand each other's pain. Because everyone can say, oh, wow, Bob, I can't believe that happened to you. I can't believe you went through this. Oh, poor you. Don't give me any kind of pity in that way. Yeah, it was hard, it was difficult, but you see, the thing that I've realized, and it took me years, it took me a time to understand, but I had no concept of the pain that Audrey put herself through. You see, this wasn't anything beautiful. It wasn't anything pleasurable. No. It wasn't anything enjoyable. It was all pain. You see, and we don't understand each other's pain often. And what all that we're really aware of is what I'm going through.
Right.
You see, and so there needs to be a sensitivity. And when we don't understand what's going on, what we tend to move towards quickly is to control. I'm going to control these circumstances. I need to control my emotions. I need to get my thoughts in order. And we try to control everything. And what we do then is sever, we build walls, we stop communicating, all these kinds of things begin to take place.
And for me, I took the moment I told Bob about the adultery, I took complete ownership, and I will even say blame upon myself, and because of the pain.
And I helped her with that. I'm like, yes, you are the one, and I just heaped it on. That was my own selfishness.
We all respond to pain in different ways. And in my response to Bob's pain, because I felt so responsible for it, I tried to do everything I possibly and humanly could do to make Bob better, to make him better, to fix him, to somehow earn his trust so that we could laugh together one day again, and so that we could dream together and just be safe with each other again. That did not happen overnight. After I told Bob about the affair, I started performing like you have no idea.
High performance.
From morning, the first moment I woke up, I thought, what can I do for Bob today to maybe make him happy? Until late at night, here I was pregnant. I wouldn't even think about my own tiredness, my own sickness. I wouldn't think about anything other than I was consumed with how can I possibly make Bob happy today. That went on not just for a day, and not just for a week, and not just for a month. That went on for years. And as you can imagine, I was extremely exhausted. I had used every resource that I had to try and make Bob better.
And what happens is that now we have control. I'm going to manage my pain, and you're going to manage your pain. And the whole thing is that here she is in high performance mode. What I did is I began to punish. Because I don't want this to ever happen again. So in my way of bringing some kind of assurance or safety or protection to me, I'm going to punish you. You see, I'm going to suppress you. I'm going to pull you down. You see, and so I'm going to try and control. Man, control just brings death every single time. So we weren't enjoying life.
No.
We weren't thriving. We were surviving.
Yes.
And it's a horrible way to live.
And you can imagine how these worked off of each other, because I would perform and get better and better for Bob, and I'd almost perform to the place where I was getting happy again. But as soon as I even started showing a little bit
Things
happiness,
are better now.
if it started to get a little bit better,
and if there was any sign of joy or happiness, it's like, you don't deserve that. And punishment. Remember what you did to me? Remember what happened? You see, this is what I'm going through.
Down.
You see, and it's a horrible cycle. But you see, all of that is based upon what? Fear.
Yes.
Audrey had a deep, deep fear that she would never be loved again. And I had a deep, deep fear that it could happen again. I couldn't trust her. I couldn't believe her love for me. You see, and where there is fear, there is a lack of what?
Love.
Love. Because perfect love expels and removes all fear. Okay? Again, we're talking about being satisfied, in life, satisfied in our marriage, satisfied in our relationship.
Where there is no fear.
And the only way for that to happen is when you are what? Perfectly loved. You see, because perfect love, or love that has been perfected, expels and removes all fear. Well, I only know of one who loves perfectly.
Yeah.
You see, and I had to get alone with God. You see, I couldn't trust her. I couldn't believe her. But I needed to get alone. God, how do you love me? How do you feel about me? God, I need a whole new point of view. Within this entire series that we've been going through, I hope that you have had a prayer within your heart of simply this: God, open my eyes. I want to see. I want to see you differently. I want to see me differently. I want to see my spouse differently. My past, my future. Open my eyes, because I'm not seeing right. And when God opens my eyes, I'm able to what? See how He loves me.
Yes.
And when His love becomes my reality, then I'm able to love her.
Yeah. And so in response to things not going well, when things aren't going well, we will have fear, because we're going to have that fear, and that fear will cause one to control. So what I did was I tried to control the circumstances by making His circumstances as good as possible. I cooked, I cleaned. He loves a clean house, so I made sure the house was always clean. And I'm talking for years. Just everything that I knew that Bob liked, I was going to make it happen for him, because I knew that one day he would love me like he used to love me. And so then it became spiritual. I thought, I heard someone once say that one moment in God's presence can change you forever. So I thought, that's it. Bob needs a moment in God's presence, and I can try to make that. I can attempt to make that happen.
I can control
I
and make that
well,
happen.
it was all in the very good motivation of my
I see.
heart.
I understand.
And so what I did was I decided that I would go ahead and invite God's presence into the foyer of our home. We opened our home, and there's just a foyer there, and I thought, if I know He's coming home at 4:30, if I take, starting at 1:30, I just start walking around in that place and just inviting God's presence and worshiping God and singing to Jesus, that His presence will just envelop that place of the house, so that when Bob walks in the door, he will open it up and just go, oh, I'm free. Yeah, that he didn't even notice. Bob came home and he just walked in business as usual and didn't even notice. And that sounds like a silly story, like, are you kidding me, Audrey? You really tried doing that? But you know what? I was so desperate. You guys, I was so tired, because I'd tried everything. I tried absolutely everything to make him be happy with me again one day. So that next morning when he went to work, I was done. I had reached bottom. I was not only physically exhausted, I was emotionally done, and I finally got to the place where I asked God a question, and it was in my journal. I wrote it down, and I said this: how do I live with a depressed man? God, what do you expect of me? What is this going to go on for the rest of our lives? Am I supposed to keep trying at this level to live with him when he's never going to be happy? He's never going to fully be back to healed self the way he used to be. I have no hope. I don't know what to do. And in my desperation, I said, how do I live with that depressed man? And he answered my question. Did you know that God, when you get desperate, He loves to answer the deep questions of your heart? And He answered that question with a sentence, and it rhymed, and I heard it in the still small voice of my heart, and it's this: changing Bob is not your job. Oh, you guys are good. Changing Bob is not your job, and it sounds like the most simple thing you could ever hear, but because I had, in such desperation, asked God, He spoke to me, and I fell down to my knees, and I said, God, I am so sorry, and I broke. I've been trying for years to be so perfect so that maybe I'll earn His love again. And you are saying that I really haven't trusted you, Jesus. I actually just envision Him and I give Him to you. He's just not my responsibility any longer. And that's when I heard the beautiful voice and smile of the Lord come upon my life. And Jesus said, now I'm going to make it all about you and me. Bob is out of this picture for a while, because I want you to experience that personal victory we were talking about. I know now what happened. He wanted to make me that satisfied one. He wanted the attention to be on me, where He wanted to heal my broken heart that I didn't even know was broken. I thought He just needed to get all fixed. But meanwhile, the condition of my own heart was full of grief and full of sadness. And so He, in His love for me, He says, just as Queen Esther one day got prepared to meet. Remember, she took a 6-month preparation season and getting ready to see the king. And do you remember what happened when she saw the king? She was irresistible. I mean, he just could not resist that Queen Esther. And so it was like the Lord was saying, Audrey, I'm going to take you on a season of preparation where I am going to make you irresistible to your husband. And I just felt it, and I was like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. And so that's when the first thing on my thing that day, I was so free. You want to talk about screaming freedom? Nothing changed on the outside. Do you get that? but something changed in my heart. And that's why we're talking about heart transformation. Something happened in my heart that day, because the first thing that I felt God say to me was, stop praying for Bob. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. And I'm not telling you to write it down. I'm saying it was a unique word for me, because what happened was I was spending my entire day praying for Bob, but in essence I was really complaining about Bob and magnifying and exalting the fact that he wasn't happy. My prayers went something like this: oh Jesus, please help Bob today while he's at work. Please help him to feel your presence. May he know that you're God. May you heal his heart. May you give him the ability to forgive me. Do you hear what I'm doing? I'm meditating on the things that were the most disappointing things about Bob. I was meditating on all day long. That had to be severed. I stopped that. And if I ever thought about Bob, my prayer language changed, and I said, thank you, God, for Bob, that I can entrust him to you, period. I'm going to go ahead and trust you with Bob. And that was the day, I don't remember the date, but that was the day that I found out that there is nothing more irresistible to a man than a woman who's not trying to change him or control him or fix him or make him better. There's nothing more irresistible than to walk into a home with a woman who is just loving her life with God and being free and trusting God.
Now that's some good news. It really is. And guys, that's good news for you. And I know my studio audience, they're like, oh dear. Like the men, they're like, I dare not move, you know? It's like, did you hear that? Did you hear that?
No, don't do that.
But the whole thing is that it's really real. And what we began to see from the very beginning is that there was a practice that we
Implemented?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
In our marriage. And it was simply this: praying with each other.
Yes.
And as we began to pray with each other on a daily basis, we began to recognize the life of God in each other. Mm-hmm. And then, am I able to trust God? Am I able to trust the life of God in that individual?
Yes.
You see, rather than trying to control or manipulate the process.
Yes.
You see, and so anytime that you're trying to control or manipulate the other person to get them to do or to be something for you, man, you'll be frustrated every single time.
There's no one, you cannot control. And when people come to us for counseling and we can tell that they are still blaming the other person or wanting to talk about the person, then we know that they're not ready for help yet. Because every single person has to look onto their own heart of how they can change. I tell you, I really believe that I was the sweetest, nicest, most serving, most giving wife that you could ever have met. If you would have said that I was controlling, I would have been shocked. But you see, we all control.
But I knew the vibe, and the vibe was I was a disappointment.
Right.
She wasn't happy with me. Mm-hmm. See, she was dissatisfied with me. And it's like, well, what do you want more from me? I'm here. You know, I'm putting a paycheck, you know, in the bank. You know, I'm staying with the kids. You know, I'm not, going anywhere. What more do you want from me? Can you see how we could so easily escalate, and preserving our dignity, preserving our identity. This is who I am, because it's made up of such and such, rather than discovering who you really are in God and who He is in you.
And you know what? We control in ways that are mysterious, but not really, because we all control using our personalities. And my unique personality is that I'm very sweet and nice and kind, but I overextended that and used my personality to control. So I don't control by nagging or getting mad or insisting. I control by being extra sweet so that you will like me and you'll do what you want for me. I'm just saying, it happens. I'm reading my own mail. And so,
we all have it, in our own personality
every
traits.
Personality can go to the wrong, there's a
silent
line that
treatment,
gets crossed.
whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. The walking out of the room, the closing of the door, whatever it might be, the phone. What the whole thing is that there's that control element there of what? I'm going to get from you what I want. Mm-hmm. And, Audrey, she was just so good at it with her sweetness, but it was something that, that we each recognize now.
Yes. And the thing is that, as Bob said from the beginning, fear is what controls. And we really want you to be free. When I had that day where controlling Bob was not my job, became my revelation, what really happened is I got a new level of God's love for me so that that dissipated that fear that I could really trust God with my husband. We're going to take a quick break. And I can't believe the time is gone already.
It's gone fast.
But we are going to apply this, to see this, how you can apply this to your life right after this.
And controlling our disappointments. You know, I mean, we'll be in a relationship, and the whole thing is that we do place expectations on one another. And it's simply because they're an individual of extreme significance and worth and value to us. And the whole thing is that we do become disappointed. So what are you going to do with those disappointments? Because when those disappointments build up, one upon the other, and they become unresolved, what happens is that it results in a closed heart. You see, when it initially happened, when it first happened, it hurt, it stung, you know, and it was like, oh, and then you may have talked about it or something, or maybe you just ignored it, but you were simply rubbed the wrong way. But left unresolved, that rubbing becomes a blister. And again, disappointment upon disappointment, that blister then becomes a calloused. And a calloused heart, or a hard heart, is one that then becomes completely insensitive to the other person. You see, and you become so detached from one another. Matthew chapter 11 says this. This is the invitation that Jesus makes. He says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy laden, and you will find rest."
I love the word
rest for your suke, rest for your soul, rest for your psyche. You see, there's an invitation to enter into rest. But the invitation is this, to come to Jesus. You know, it's not, you know, to go here or to go there, but the invitation is to really to come to Him that you might find rest. And then He says, "My yoke fits perfectly." And a better translation for that is, yoke yourself to me, because my yoke fits perfectly, means this: it's exactly what you need. What you need is to yoke yourself to Him, because the burden I give you, He says, is light. You see, that's what happens. So the invitation today is for all of you that are weary and heavy laden, all of you that feel like giving up.
And
You just want to quit. That's the weary ones, the quitters. And then the heavy laden is, you've taken on so much responsibility. You know, you feel as though, like Audrey did, I created the mess, I created the problem, therefore it's my responsibility to fix it. You have burdened yourself. You've become heavy laden with responsibility that isn't yours.
And you were never meant to carry.
You never meant to carry, and then you are the controller. So Jesus, in His invitation to you, it's this: come unto me, all of you quitters and controllers, and I want to show you rest.
So our prayer today for you, in fact, I want to pray for you right now. Lord Jesus, I pray for my precious friends that are listening right now, that you will give them your rest.
Yeah.
That they can trust you on a whole new level today.
Yes.
And they are going to just come to you with their disappointments, the things that haven't gone right, their failures, their regrets, their shame. And we just lay them down at the foot of the cross, Jesus. And we say, give us rest for our soul, because we don't want to quit and we don't want to control. We want to surrender to you and trust you completely. Thank you, Jesus.
With all confidence, I can say this: your best days are still ahead. Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye.